Good day, everyone. This is Mr. H, the Fine Arts Instructor. In this video, I'm going to be teaching you how to use two-point perspective. Remember, that's a type of linear perspective to make things look three-dimensional. We're going to use two-point perspective to draw a basic car and a simple background scene to kind of give it a sense of place. Now, when we're drawing the car, just bear in mind that we're going to make it very boxy looking so that it is easier to do with two-point perspective. So it's going to resemble kind of a later 70s through 1980s style car. However, if you want to go and try to, watch the video and do something different with what you've learned, you're also welcome to do that as well. What can be kind of fun is to see how somebody does something and then put your own spin on it and give it your own flavor. So this is a set of guidelines that you can use to learn how to draw a car in perspective, but you can choose to do your own thing as long as you are still using two-point perspective to give it a whole nother look and to really make it more personalized. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we're now going to switch to our other camera and begin. To begin with, I just want to give you a reminder of what sort of materials you're going to need for this drawing. First and foremost, you do need a nice sharp pencil, hopefully with an eraser. If you don't have a good eraser, or if your eraser isn't real sharp, you can get another eraser like this one. You can see I cut a little sharp edge onto it to give it a little bit more ability to get into use details, and I can also use the little chunk that I pulled off the side as well. You're going to need two 18-inch rulers because our paper is 12 by 18, and it won't be long enough to stretch all the way across the paper diagonally like we might need to do for some of our drawings. So two 18-inch rulers are also helpful for that reason. The other thing that you're going to need is two Post-it notes. I like to use the lined super sticky Post-it notes for this. The super sticky Post-it notes by the actual Post-it note brand. These are great because they don't fall off your paper partway through your drawing, which means you don't have to try to get them back in the right spot accurately, or have to use tape to secure them on. And then have a pencil sharpener near you somewhere. It doesn't have to be a hand sharpener like this. It can be an electric sharpener, but some sort of pencil sharpener handy is also going to do you a lot of good. All right, now to begin with, we are going to take our two Post-it notes, and we are going to line one edge of the Post-it note up with the top of your paper, and we're going to put them both on the left and the right sides. So I'm just going to take my Post-it and line it up with the top of the paper. I'm using these lines on the actual Post-it note to also help me to make my Post-it note go straight up and down, because I can just line it up with the edge of the paper right here and stick it down like that. And then we'll do the same thing on the opposite side. Now, I like my vanishing points to be as far off of the paper as possible. So we're going to flip this over, and we are going to be doing all of our drawing on the other side of the paper now. That way the Post-it note isn't in our way. So to begin with, we are just going to be using our ruler. We're going to make 3 marks 2 inches from the top of the paper. One's going to be on the left, one is going to be on the right, and one is going to be on near the middle. So I like to look down upon my ruler. By the way, make sure that your first line of your ruler is lined up with the edge of the paper. That's going to ensure that your mark is accurate when you go to place your mark at 2 inches. And I'm making it nice and light. This mark is not going to be kept. It's going to be gotten rid of. And now I am just lining up my first line of my ruler with the top of the paper somewhere into the middle of the paper and making another mark 2 inches from the top of the paper, and then going over here to this side and doing the same thing on the opposite side. Now, why are we making these 3 marks? Well, we're going to use these 3 marks to figure out where we need to put our Post-it note over here or where we need to put our vanishing points over here at the edges of the Post-it notes. So I'm going to line my ruler up with 2 of those 3 marks. And remember that the vanishing point is a dot. If you want to make yourself a little line first and then a dot like I just did, you can do that. But remember that the vanishing point is actually the dot. You can choose to label it with a little VP to remind yourself that that's the vanishing point, or you can just make the dot all by itself. And then we'll use the middle mark right here and the right-hand mark to get our vanishing point placed over here on the right-hand side as well. Remember, we want it right at the edge of our Post-it note. We don't want it right at the edge of the paper. If you put it right here at the edge of the paper, then there's no point in the Post-it note. So after you get done with making your 2 vanishing points, and yes, you can label it with a little VP if you like, we are going to get rid of those 3 marks. Now, to begin our car, we first have to define the bottom edge of the vehicle. And so the first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to decide which vanishing point we want to use. I'm going to use the vanishing point on the right side to make the car look like it's zooming away back into space towards the right vanishing point. So use one of your two rulers and line it up with the bottom of line it up with the vanishing point on your right hand side, and draw yourself a nice long line. We're going to make this kind of like a big boat car like you might have seen during the 1970s, or like I said, 1980s. Kind of depends on the styling that we choose for it. So this is the bottom edge of the car. The wheels will be below this line, but first let's go ahead and draw the side of the car. So to draw the side of the car, what we're going to do is we're going to draw a straight up and down line right here. And remember that for the most part, we're still following that rule about if it's not a straight up and down line, it has to go to a vanishing point. There will be one exception when we're working on this drawing, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So we've drawn a straight up and down line. This is the front of the bumper. Now we're going to draw the depth of the bumper. This is the amount of space that the bumper will travel before it gets to the front end of the car, where like the grille and headlights would be. So there's the depth of the bumper, and now we're just going to draw another straight up and down line to represent the height of the area where the headlights and the grille is going to be. And then we're going to draw the top of the hood. Now this one is going to go towards your vanishing point, just like this little short line and this long line did. And we're still going to the right vanishing point. Now, this is where we are going to break that rule about things needing to go either vertically, straight up and down, or towards a vanishing point. You don't want your windshield to be straight up and down, because if a rock bounces and hits that windshield, it's more likely to shatter it if it is a straight up and down windshield. So we want our windshield to angle. So this line is one of the few times when we're actually going to break that rule about things needing to be either vertical or going to a vanishing point. You just choose your own angle. It can be more of a sloped angle. You just don't want to make it going straight up and down. So the next line is going to be going towards our vanishing point. This is the top of the roof of the car. And then you're going to do another windshield. This one is going to angle in the opposite direction. And this one is also going to be an angle of your choosing. It's not going to a vanishing point. This is the rear windshield. I'm not exactly sure how long this line needs to be, so I made it go a little bit lighter. That way I can hopefully get it all erased if it goes too far. We're going to make the height of the trunk the same as the height of the hood. So we're going to go ahead and put our pencil against this corner or anywhere along this line. We're going to line it up with that right-hand vanishing point, and we're going to draw the trunk of the car coming out from along that line for the rear windshield. If any part went too far past, you can erase that area. All right, so the last steps here is just to kind of do the reverse of this. So we'll have a straight up and down line representing the bottom of, or the back of the trunk. And since I'm closer to the edge of the paper, it's easier to make my line straight up and down because I can just compare the distance between the ruler and the edge of the paper. Kind of nice. Now, I'm not sure what the height of the bumper is going to be, so I kind of made my line go a little bit lighter as it went further down. That way it's easier to erase if it went too far. And we're going to use the same height that we had here to place the height for the bumper in the back, kind of like we did with the hood and the trunk. So I'm going to line up my pencil with this line right here and my right vanishing point, and we're going to use that height to help to place where the back bumper's depth is going to be, and then just put in a straight up and down line to finish off the side of the car. If I need to darken a line, like, the bottom of this trunk before it hits, or where it hits the bumper, I can do that. And of course, if something didn't go far enough, I can always extend that a little bit further. So I didn't quite make the bottom of the car touch to the bottom of the bumper. So we'll just fix that. There we go. All right, so we now have the basic side view of the car, zooming back into space towards our right vanishing point. Now we need to determine the width of the car. So I'm going to start from right down here at the bottom of the bumper, and the ruler is going to line up with our left vanishing point. So when you're drawing this line, you got to decide how wide you want the car to be. You don't want it to be that wide. That would be too skinny. You don't want it to be super wide, or it's going to look kind of too wide to be able to drive on a public road. So you just go ahead and draw that line as long as it feels like it needs to be in order to make it a realistic width for your car. Now, after you get done, we're going to be drawing a straight up and down line, and then a line that goes to the vanishing point to stop the height of the bumper at the proper height. So let's go ahead and draw our straight up and down line first. I'm going to make it a little bit light as it goes up higher, and that way it's easier for me to erase any part of it if it goes past. And then I'm lining up the top of my original bumper corner with my left vanishing point and drawing this line over here. And any part of that vertical line that went too long, we're just going to erase. All right, so we're going to do the same thing over and over again. So see how this line goes to that right vanishing point? Well, this line is 2, and then we'll have the corner going towards my left vanishing point. Then we'll continue that same process again. We're going to have a straight up and down line just like this one back here, and then a line that goes from this corner towards our left vanishing point. Now, as time goes on, you may become very, very good at guesstimating how long lines like this one need to be, and you may end up finding that you need to do less and less erasing of lines as time goes on. And that's a good thing. That just means that your brain is able to adapt to drawing things in 2-point perspective. All right, we're going to draw this line back here going towards our right vanishing point. And then from this corner towards the left vanishing point to show the width of the hood. Remember that when you're holding down your ruler, hold it in the middle if you're afraid that it might end up moving while you're trying to draw the line. Spread out your fingers real wide, and that way it's less likely to move and you're less likely to make mistakes as a result. All right, so now we got the bumper, we got the front end, we got the hood. We're going to copy this angle next, and that's where using your second ruler can also come in handy. So go ahead and line up that other ruler with that side of the windshield that you gave yourself on the right. And I'm going to put this ruler against this corner. And I'm just going to look at the distance between the rulers and try to make the distance between the rulers look the same. So if it looks like the same width all the way down, then I know I'm good to draw this line for the side of the windshield on the left. You know what? I was a little bit off from that corner, so I'm going to erase this. I'm going to move it over just a little bit, using that same technique, drawing the line more accurately from the corner this time. All right, so the distance between the rulers looks pretty accurate. Okay, now we're going to go from this corner towards our left vanishing point to show the width of the top of the windshield here. Oop, again, I was a little bit off from that corner. I need to be a little bit more careful. All right, and if I have any part of the windshield line that went too far, erase it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to be drawing the roof of the car, and that's going to be going towards our vanishing point. Both lines are. So from this corner, I'm going to go towards that vanishing point. So from the right side towards the left vanishing point. And from the left corner towards the right vanishing point. Okay, so not too many more steps left to drawing this car. If you had a very short trunk, then the line that shows the width of the trunk might go behind the windshield. And if that does, great, you don't have to worry about what I'm going to show you next. All you have to do is just draw that line until it hits your windshield. But in this case, I suspect that my trunk is long enough to where I am going to see the back corner of it. And yeah, it is. So that makes your job a little bit trickier. So I'm going to show you the trick on how to figure out, where this line is going to be over here. So I'm just going to line up my ruler with that corner and my right vanishing point. And I'm just going to draw a little short line coming from the roof of the car. And then I'm going to be drawing from this corner towards my left vanishing point, in order to figure out where the back end of the trunk width is going to be. And where those lines cross over each other creates the back corner of the trunk on the left-hand side. Okay, we've only got one line left to go, and it's going to be the line that comes from this little teeny corner of our bumper right here, just showing the top surface of the bumper. It's going to go to our left vanishing point, and we only have to draw it a short distance until it hits the back of the trunk. Okay, so we've now got the entire car all blocked out, and there's no real details to it yet, but we'll go ahead and start working on those next. I think the next thing I'm going to do is start working on the rims and tires. And so it is hard to make a circle and 2-point perspective. There are technical tricks that can be used to draw it accurately, but it's going to work better in a larger sheet of paper where you have more room to draw that circle, those tricks, and create an accurate circle. So I'm going to show you the kind of cheater method to do this. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to decide how far down from the bottom of the car the tires are going to be. And I'm going to say probably about this height right here would be a good height for how far below the bottom of the car the tires would be. So I think right about there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and figure out where along the front end of the car I want the tires to be. So I'm going to say probably starting right about here and going about that far. Now remember, as things get further back in space, they're going to get smaller and smaller. And that's why this gap is larger than this gap. And so we got to make sure that the width of the tire is also going to be smaller. So I'm going to make the width of the tire a little bit less wide over there near the back. Okay, so we've now placed, and I probably should have drawn those lighter, but oh well. We've now placed the line that's going to help us to figure out where the bottom of the tire is going to be. Now we're going to go ahead and draw 2 straight up and down lines, one from each side of this tire line and one from each side of this one, so 4 lines total. Make them light. I should have made the bottom of the tire lines light. Make sure that these are light. You're going to be erasing the entire box pretty much. All right. I'm going to make this one go just a little longer. I think it might need to. There we go. And I'm going to do the same thing right over here for that back tire. All right, and then when we go to create the top line, what we're shooting for is a square shape, but a square with like a tilted top and bottom. So to me, this seems pretty close to looking like a square, but with a tilted top and bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that line right here and draw that line right here, and I'm going to do it lightly. So we've now got the basic squares here to help to figure out the placement of our tires. And the next thing we're going to do is create the circle in here. Now, the cheater trick for doing that is first let's figure out where the center of the circle will be. And to do that, we're just going to line up our ruler with the opposite corners of the square we drew, and we're going to draw a little diagonal near the center of it. And then we're going to do the same thing in the opposite direction. And that gives us the center of the circle. And it's pretty much perfectly where the bottom of the car line is. So that makes my job a little easier. And then we're going to draw if we didn't have it exactly where the bottom of the car was, we draw a line that goes towards the vanishing point that lines up with the middle of the X. In our case, since it's pretty much there already. We're just going to draw a straight up and down line that also goes through the middle of the X. And the purpose for these two lines is to figure out where the center of the four sides of the box are. So why would this side be bigger than this side though? Well, that's because it's closer to us than the opposite side of the box. And that's why you have to use that X trick first instead of just trying to figure out by eyeballing where the center is. So we're going to go ahead and use those same tricks right over here. And it should end up with the center of the X being right in the same exact location along the bottom of the car. And it looks like it does. So all we have to do now is just to draw our straight up and down line to help us with the figuring out where the center at top and bottom is. All right. And then the next step is we're just going to draw a curve that comes as close to the corners as you can without the tire looking boxy. So I'm drawing a line that goes from the ends of that kind of tilted plus shape that we got, like this. Draw lightly. You may need to do some adjusting as you're working. And then after you've got that, you can basically erase the square and you can erase all the stuff inside of the tire, maybe except for the very center. There's our basic shape for the outside of the tire. Now to draw where the tire meets the rim, go ahead and just copy that shape that you created for the outside of the circle. The only thing you got to remember is that things are going to be getting smaller as they go back into space. So yeah, you will want to make that tire look a little less thick as it goes further away in space. All right, now, if you want to, you can draw the rim of the wheel. Doing things like spokes for your wheel or a lot of fine details can be a little difficult. So I'll let you decide if you want to do that. If you want to make life easy on yourself, you can just give it four lug nuts or 5, however many you want. And you can draw a little circle in the middle just to represent the center and kind of make it the same shape as the outside circles that you drew. So there's a real simple steel wheel. If you want to get crazy and you want to do some spokes, yeah, go ahead and do that. But that's something that I'll leave up to you and your discretion. So in other words, if you want to do it, go for it. But it's not something that I'm going to be requiring of you. But if you want to do a real simple series of spokes, sure, you can do that. Okay. Now, the last thing we want to do on this tire is just to figure out the width of the tire. So I'm going to put my ruler against my left vanishing point. I'm going to swing it around until I get to the very outside of the tire. And it's really important that you're lined up with the vanishing point here. As soon as you get to the outside of the tire, then you can draw that width of the tire going towards that left vanishing point. Okay? To kind of wrap that up, if you want to give a little bit of a curve to the transition between the bodywork and the wheel well, you can do that. And then you can repeat the same steps over here in the back. All right, so the last step is just to give it the thickness of the tire back here. So again, I'm going to line up my ruler with the left-hand vanishing point. I'm swinging it around until I get to the edge of that tire and then drawing the width of the tire. And it may not be able to go all the way to the body without looking too wide. So if you want to stop a little early, you can. Or if it's going to have big fat tires back there, if it's a muscle car or something, you can keep going until you hit the body. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this curve right here. right over here where I stopped the line, and that way you see a little hint of where the curvature of the other side of that tire is. And then of course you can still give that smooth curve transition between the bodywork and the wheel well and wheel. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your second finished tire and wheel. You're not going to see the ones on the other side. The body's in the way, right? So our next steps is we're going to take a look at the body itself, and we're going to start to give some extra details to make it look like a more fully realized car. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show the bumper kind of going around the side over here. I'm not going to make it sticking out from the fender. That might just be a little bit more than I want to get into for this drawing. You could if you want to challenge yourself, but if you don't want to challenge yourself, then you don't have to. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the headlights and I'm going to make the turn signals. And I get to decide what style of headlights, turn signals, grille, and all that I want to see. So the first step is I want to figure out how wide the headlights are going to be. So I'm going to give myself a real light mark right here, just to give myself an indicator of where the lights stop and where the grille begins. And then I want to try to get a similar length back here, but it's going to be less wide because it's further away. Just like that. And then I can go ahead and put in 2 straight up and down lines to represent the placement of that grille, or the edges of the grille. So there's one. I'm going to flip around my ruler like this so I can compare the angle of my straight up and down line to the angle that I used right here. And actually it shouldn't be at an angle. It should just be straight up and down. So that would be the width of my grille. I can also give myself a little chrome bezel to go around the grille, so kind of like an outside ring around the grille. So just choosing a width that I think will look good. 2 lines will go towards the vanishing point, one at the top, one at the bottom. Actually, yeah. So I'm lined up with my left vanishing point, and here would be the other side of the bezel. Then drawing our straight up and down line. All right, now that we've got the bezel going around the grille, I can draw the little slats in the grille that go towards our left vanishing point, or I could have them going straight up and down too. It's kind of a personal taste. It's worked different ways with different types of cars throughout automotive history. The first thing I'm going to do is simply mark what appears to be the halfway point on this line, and then I'll divide that space above and below it into halves, and then divide the spaces between those marks in halves. That way I've got a bunch of hopefully equally spaced marks, and then I'll connect those marks going towards our vanishing point, or draw them lining up with the vanishing point. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to start to work on is going to be the headlights and the side indicators. I just need to choose a height for the headlights, and I'm thinking maybe about that tall. And then the turn signals will be below that, and I'll make them about that tall. All right, now most of the turn signals are going to either wrap around the side of the car, or they'll be like little side indicator lights right here. I think I'm going to make them just go around the corner of the car a little bit, and that's so that when you're alongside somebody, if they flip on their signals, you'll be able to see that they have the intention of changing lanes. We'll cap that off with a straight up and down line. And then for the headlights, I think I'm going to do a bezel around those, kind of like I did with the grille here. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is I think it would look kind of cool if I saw a little bit of the distance inside of those lenses. So I can actually make them go back in space a little bit like this. And then, so I'm going towards my right vanishing point. And then I can draw a line that lines up with my left vanishing point. Right there and right there. And then a straight up and down line from the corner we just created. All right, that's actually looking pretty cool. Let's put a hood ornament up here. Now, first off, where's the center of this grill? We can use the same trick that we did for the wheels. Draw a really light X in the middle here. So that's the center of the grill, and we can figure out where the center is above the grill by just drawing a straight up and down line from there. We don't even need to draw the whole line. We just need to mark it right there. So that'll be the center of our hood. And we can just draw a little post. And this is so small, I just hand drew it, but usually I'd always use a ruler. And we can draw a little hood ornament. All right, so is there any other details that I want to add to the front end of the car? Well, I definitely want to get the edges of the windshield in here. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start to define the side windows over here. Now I'm going to draw the side windows on the lighter side because there are some details that we're going to have to put in when it comes to the doors. And so we're going to keep these lines light because we may end up erasing parts of them when we go to draw in the doors and things like the mirrors. So we drew two lines that line up with your right vanishing point for the top and bottom of the side windows. We're going to finish off the A-pillar. A-pillars are pretty thick usually, by the way. They are a structural component to the car. Having the A-pillars and the hood attached to the car give a car more structural rigidity. I think they call these, I don't know, these A-pillars or C-pillars. I don't remember. But there's one in the back too. And again, they're usually on the thicker side. They're even thicker in the back usually. All right, so from here, we're going to be figuring out a couple of more things. So the first thing is I think we want to have a mirror on our car. So the mirror is going to be over here. And actually, I think that's a good reason to move this A-pillar even further back. And that way we've got a little bit more structure there for the mirror to attach to. So I'm just moving it back a little bit more. Okay, so for a mirror, we're going to go pretty simple. We're just going to make it a simple boxy style of mirror, just like the car is boxy. So I'm going to line up our ruler with our left vanishing point and with this line that separates the windshield from the hood. And I'm just going to extend that line a little bit further. And then we're going to do the same thing a little bit higher up. We're going to have a straight up and down line to stop your mirror. If you can see your window inside that mirror, yeah, go ahead and erase some of it if you want. And then we're going to make a couple little lines that go towards your right vanishing point. These are nice short lines. Your mirror is not going to be super thick. We're going to have one from right here too. And then you'll have a straight up and down line between. So we know it's straight up and down because this one's straight up and down. So just straight up and down right here. Then one more going towards your left vanishing point until we hit that other diagonal that we created. If you can still see any part of the window through the side mirror, you can erase that, leaving behind the side mirror. If you want to give it additional details, if you want to like make it cut in and go like this, you can do that, or you can leave it as it is. I'll show you how to make it cut in. It's not hard. So I could make more of an arm for the mirror. That first line went towards our vanishing point. That was on the top of the mirror. And then we'll have a straight up and down one right here. And then we'll have one that goes towards our left vanishing point. Like that. I went a little bit too far on that one. You will need to see a little bit of the thickness of that mirror, or of the arm of the mirror, I should say, if we're going to do that. And so you'll see that thickness right there. All right, now we've finished off with that mirror, and now we got to figure out what other details we're going to be seeing in this image. And I think we're going to be seeing, obviously the lines of the door. We're also going to be seeing the division between the doors. So we'll have a front door, we'll have a back door. We'll also have some door handles as well. All right, so for the door handles, you're going to have rectangles are going to tilt towards your right vanishing point. So you'll have two lines, one for the top and bottom of the door handles, and two straight up and down lines to stop them. Now, we will probably try to add a little bit of thickness to them. However, you're mostly going to see the thickness of the door handles in the front door handle, because the other one's further back, and you just may have those lines so close together you can't even see the thickness of them. But we'll do it and see if they're visible. Lights, just like with side indicator, tail lights need to be visible from the side of the car. Oh, you know what could be cool? On cars of this age, they had to have antennas. They didn't have like the little shark fin at the top of the hood or anything like that. And sometimes the antennas were in the front of the car, sometimes they were in back, but let's go ahead and draw a little antenna. So I'm going to draw just a teeny little oval right here to show where the antenna comes out of the hood. And then I'm going to draw a line that is just a hair off from straight up and down, because we want our antenna to taper. I changed the angle of my ruler just slightly. So I have just a really skinny long V, and I can even put a little ball at the top of the antenna. All right, yeah, I think that was a great final touch. All right, so now what we got to think about is what's going to be happening in the rest of this piece of paper, because just a floating car in space, kind of boring, right? So I think the first thing that we're going to end up doing is placing a road. And since the car is facing this way, that means there's going to be a lane here and then another lane over here. It's hard to decide exactly where the road is going to start, because you can't see where the tire is on the other side without doing a lot of extra work. So I'm just going to guesstimate that the side of the road is going to poke out from somewhere over here along the front end of the car. So we will probably need to use our double ruler trick. Yeah, see how my ruler isn't going all the way over to my vanishing point? So I am going to use that double ruler trick. So the double ruler trick, if you've not seen it before, is just line two rulers up with each other. And then you can use one end of your ruler to line up with the vanishing point. And then you're going to be using the side of, so two things. Notice that my number sides are touching each other. That's a great way to go, because it just reminds you you're always going to draw on the number side of your ruler. So if your two number sides are touching each other, you've got your ruler over here lined up with your vanishing point. That means I can use the number side of this ruler to draw and it'll be accurately lined up with our vanishing point. And then I can move this ruler out of the way in order to continue that road until I get to the edge of my paper. So that is perfectly going towards our vanishing point, even though our ruler was not long enough to get all the way there on its own. All right, so we've got one side of the street. Now what we're going to need is some center lines of the street. This will be easier to place. Our ruler is long enough and we can see where the wheels are. So that one has a slight curve, so I'm going to retire that and switch over to this one for this line. Sometimes those wood rulers come slightly warped. So I'm going to draw the lines on the road starting right about here. That way, slightly wider cars have the ability to drive on the road as well. All right, and instead of making a dotted or dashed line going to the vanishing point, I'm just going to make it an unbroken line, like a yellow line or white line. The reason why I do that is because it is really hard to make those lines look like they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and the gaps between them getting smaller and smaller and smaller as they go towards your vanishing point. It's way easier just to do an unbroken line. So that's my suggestion. And I think I'm going to do a double yellow. So one that people are not allowed to cross over under any circumstances. So what that just means, in essence, is 4 lines, all 4 going to your vanishing point. Cool. So I got my double yellow lines. I've got where the street hits the sidewalk over here. And then we're just going to guesstimate where we're going to see the curb or the sidewalk over here on this side. And I don't think we're going to be seeing much of it because it's a pretty wide street. And I think that's, yeah, I don't even think realistically you'd see it, but I'll add a little suggestion of where that road is on the other side of the street or where that sidewalk would be. So here would be like the edge of the curb or sidewalk right there. And if I want to actually make it look like a curb, I can draw 2 lines. So that way there is a difference between the curb and the sidewalk. And then we can do the same thing over here, actually. Let's grab our other ruler again. I'm going to use our ruler extending trick. And so this next line is going to be where the side of the curb ends and changes direction to be flat on the ground. Notice I stretched out my fingers a little bit. That way my ruler wouldn't move while I was drawing that line. Ooh, I forgot to do it back here, though. Line my rulers back up, line my ruler up with the vanishing point and that line I just drew. Then I can take this ruler away in order to draw that line going back into space. Perfect. All right, and then we'll draw the top of the curb. So this is the line that separates the curb from the sidewalk. By the way, on the other side, there isn't going to be 3 lines like this because you can't see the straight up and down part. It would be behind this. It's out of sight. Okay, so get my ruler's line back up because I forgot to do it in the back over there while I was chatting. All right, and then we can move this out of the way and we can make that 3rd line right over there too. All right, now we're going to draw a sidewalk over here, and then I think what I'm going to do in the background is I'm going to do like a very simple like farmhouse and maybe a barn, and if we have some room, we might even put in some fields. I think I might also do like a fence, maybe like a barbed wire fence or something. So looking at the width of the road here, I got to decide how wide I want my sidewalk to be, and maybe our sidewalk is going to end right about there. So I'll line up my rulers with each other and with the vanishing points. Okay. Here is the sidewalk, and line myself back up again. Okay. And there is my sidewalk disappearing off into the distance. All right, cool. Now what we're going to be working on next, I feel, is that really accurate? Actually, it could have been a little bit higher. Yeah, I think I'm going to erase that. Messed up on its placement just a little bit. I think my rulers moved while I was using the double ruler trick. So by the way, I call these teachable moments when I make a mistake and need to fix something, because I think it's a good example of the fact that the teacher isn't always right. I mean, I'm human just like everybody. I make mistakes. So the important thing when you make a mistake, whether you're talking about art or life in general, is making right by your mistakes. In other words, fixing your mistakes. Okay? So I am making right by my mistake by fixing that line that was inaccurate and placing it in the correct location. And yeah, that looks better. The reason that I felt like it was wrong is because see how close I was on that old line to the hood or to the trunk? Well, that would have been too close. It wasn't that close over here. Why would it be that much different on the other side? For our farm's fence here, I think we're going to make it like a barbed wire fence. So we're going to have some log posts that are going to be spaced out into the distance over here, and then we'll have some barbed wire that goes between them, and then we'll work on the farmhouse after that. So I'm just going to draw a post at a size that I think looks right beside my car, so maybe like that tall. So it's helpful to guesstimate things based on the size of something else that's nearby. And I'm going to make these posts round. That just is going to make your life a lot easier. So I put a little oval at the top and half of an oval down there at the bottom. And now I can more accurately place the height of the rest of them by lining the top of that up with our vanishing points, or with our vanishing point on the right. And that'll allow us to figure out the height of the rest of them. Okay, cool. So we got our fence posts all placed there, and when it comes to the barbed wire, you're basically going to do the same thing. So I'm going to line up my ruler with my right vanishing point, and I'm going to draw a couple of lines of barbed wire. Maybe first I should erase the line that helped us to place the posts. We don't need it anymore. Barbed wire, for those that don't know, are a type of wire that has like little twists and jabby, pokey parts, and it was designed as a means of trying to keep livestock within your fence line without having to spend as much money on fences. So, obviously, if you're making a fence all out of wood or all out of metal or mesh or something, it's going to take you a lot of material in order to fence in a long stretch of land or a large stretch of land. So the whole idea behind barbed wire is to keep the cost as low as possible. All you got to do is stick a handful of posts in the ground once every 10 feet or so, and then you can stretch a line of barbed wire, 2 lines of barbed wire, maybe 3 maximum, along those between those posts, and you can keep your animals in without having to spend nearly as much money. And the reason why animals would stay in, even though it was just a thin piece of wire, was because of all those little pokey bits. They would try to push into it, the pokey bits would stick them, and they would not be a very happy animal. All right, so just drawing our barbed wire line going between our posts here. I'm curving that line downwards, by the way, because we're below the eye level. Therefore, it curves downwards, just like the curve at the bottom of the pole. And then you can make these little star shapes all over your line. Obviously, as you get further back into space, you're not going to see all of them. but at least for the left-hand side of the paper, I would consider drawing those. Okay, so the barbed wire fence is now complete, and now I can start to think about what else is going to be in our background over there. And I talked about wanting to do like maybe a barn and a house. So I think that's what we're going to start working on next. Now on our house, I think I want to make a house that's got a pitched roof. In other words, it's not a flat roof, it's a roof that comes to a little point. So I'm going to do that next. So the first step of making kind of a traditional style of roof for your house is to figure out where the center of your box is. And to do that, you're going to draw the X from corner to corner, kind of like we done with the wheels or with the, when we were trying to figure out where the center of the grill was. And then from there, you're going to be making a straight up and down line. And we don't have to draw the whole line. We just need to kind of show where the center above this side would be up here. And then choose the angle that you want to see for your house roof. If you want to make it less of an angle or more of an angle, it's completely up to you. So I'll go from this corner and go somewhere and stop right along that line somewhere. I'll make it go past the edge of the building here so that there's a little bit of eaves on the roof. And then we'll make it go from here to wherever this diagonal hit that straight up and down line. And again, we're going to go past for the eaves. Now, how far past? Well, you can figure that out because you can kind of make this corner for the end of that eave line up with your right vanishing point. And so it looks like our eaves would be the same length if they came down to there. So I'm going to lengthen up that eave just a little bit so it'll look like it's similar in its length to the one on the other side. All right. Now, for the other side of the roof, well, actually, let's get the top line of the roof line. That's going to go to our left vanishing point. I'm going to kind of get it lighter as I go over there because I'm not exactly sure where the other line is going to intercept it. And then we're going to do the same thing that we did with the sides of the windshield. You know what this angle is. To get the angle over here, place your other ruler in a similar direction. Look at the gaps between the rulers. Adjust them so that the gap between the rulers looks the same. I think we're pretty good right there. So my other roof line will be right about there. Then I can always darken up the top of the roof line here. And then we can get rid of the details that we don't need anymore. But the two details that we're missing is the edge of the roof where it ends, right here and right over here. Those are going to go towards our left vanishing point. There we go. All right. If something got erased and you want it darker, put it back in darker. Same as usual. Okay, and then we got one more over here to put in. Also going to my left vanishing point. So I think I'm going to make the top of the windows and door for the bottom story at this height. I think I need to make this one just a little bit longer. Okay. And then the bottom of the windows. Oh, you know what? I forgot to mark the corner of the building as well, because we want to make sure that the windows on the other side look like they're at the same height, right? So the bottom of our windows will be lining up with this mark. Now we can put in the sides of the windows and the sides of the doors, or door. Okay, if you need to darken anything, go ahead and darken it. If you need to erase anything, erase it. Okay, so we got a basic door and 2 windows. I think having a cross piece for the windows is going to look nice. It'll make it look more like a farmhouse. So we can make a little cross piece in the windows. Okay, and then we'll make a couple of windows up here too. Try just eyeball to make them the same size. All right, cool. So we got some windows there. Some farmhouses will have like an attic up here that may have a window. We could even do it like a circular window if we wanted to. And we can draw that the same way that we did our wheels. All right, for this side, I think we're just going to have lower windows. We're not going to have upper windows. And so we're just going to line up our ruler with those 3 marks we gave ourselves and draw those side windows. Oh, give it a little doorknob there. So that's our completed house if you want to keep it very basic. If you want to add extra details, if you want to add an extra window over here, if you want to add shingles, you can. Shingles would actually be pretty easy. All you really have to do is just to make evenly spaced marks along the edge of your roof right here. And then draw lines that go towards your left vanishing point. By the way, why would I have drawn these shingles by hand instead of using a ruler? Well, shingles are actually placed by hand. That's how they're actually put on the roof. So it's actually going to make it look more realistic if there are very slight differences and imperfections here and there. It'll actually look better that way. So that's basically the reason why I did it that way. All right, now what we're going to do next is we are going to draw, let's make a sidewalk. The sidewalk is going to come from the front door and it's going to line up with the left vanishing point. And I'm going to make the sidewalk kind of go in a different direction by making it line up with my other vanishing point over here. So the first line we're going to use for the barn is just going to be a straight up and down line. Barns are very typically long rather than perfectly square, so I'm going to make the barn also kind of take on more of a long appearance for that reason. All right, now for the roof, I'm going to make the roof above this side right here. So the roof is going to be up there. We just use the same technique again. Draw a little X in the middle of your box by connecting the corners of the box together with your ruler. Put a straight up and down line above that X. Make sure it's really straight up and down. And then from the corners of that side of the box, connect up somewhere along that straight up and down line, and make sure you go past the corner a little bit for the eaves. We'll compare to make sure that the eaves look correct in size by lining up the end of one of them with our left vanishing point over here. And it looks like that eave is going to stop right about here. This one, ooh, I did a good job. They're the correct in length. All right, to get our top line of the roof line, we'll just go towards our right vanishing point. I'm getting lighter as I go further over because I don't know exactly where I need to stop yet. I'll line up this ruler with one of those angles for the side of my roof. Line up this ruler with this corner and try to get the distance between the two rulers the same. And once they look the same, draw this line. I'll know how long the roof eave ought to be over here by lining up this corner right here with my vanishing point on the right. Ooh, and I need to go quite a bit longer, it looks like. So let's lengthen up this line a bit. There we go. All right, now we can draw where the roof ends in the front, and just a hint of where it'll end in the back. These lines are going towards your right vanishing point. And then you can get rid of all the details that you don't need anymore. All right. For those of you who have heard this saying before, were you born in a barn when you leave the front door open when, it's a hot day outside or something, or a cold day? Barn doors are very large. And so when we're ready to make the door on this barn, we're going to make it look big, like a garage door. Cool. All right. The rest of the building, there's not going to be, I'm not going to do any windows on the side of the barn and stuff. A lot of barns don't. A lot of the time there will be a window up here, and there might even be like a winch sticking out of it. And that was to hoist up, hay bales up into the attic up there. So maybe I'll draw one little opening up here, but that's going to be it. There's not going to be any like cross pieces to it or anything. Let's think about not doing a shingled roof like this. A lot of times barns will have a metal tin roof. So I'm going to draw some lines to help me to place those. All right, and then tin roofs come in standard, I believe it's 8-foot lengths. So we will just go like that. And I think now we got our finished barn roof. And if you want to add extra details, you could. If you want to add some more windows, you can. Another thing you could do is you could just draw some slightly wobbly lines. And I'm doing this on purpose without using a ruler because this is representing like rough cut wood planks. And so those rough cut wood planks may be a little bit different width. They may not be perfectly straight. They may be a little wobbly. They may be a little inconsistent in how wide they are compared to each other. And therefore, it'll look more natural and look more like the kind of rough sort of appearance that most barns would have on the outside. Cool. All right. So the barn's all finished off now. And the last thing I would say that I might want to do is maybe just some fields. And the fields are just going to be long diagonal lines going off into the distance. And so let's go ahead and place the edge of my fields right against this line. And I'm going to make it really light. And the field lines themselves are going to go off towards that vanishing point. I can go ahead and put in widths for the field lines and make sure that they get a little bit smaller as they go off towards my left vanishing point. So your field's widths will look like they're getting less and less wide because they're getting further and further away in space. All right, let's give that a try. All right, now you can see we've got a gap between the fields, and that's just because I didn't mark anything, along here or between here and here. So maybe I should do that real quick too. Okay. Okay, well that looks pretty darn good. Spacing got a little weird in that area there, but we're just going to leave it. Okay, so this is now our completed scene when it comes to all the major details in the land. The only remaining thing that I am definitely going to want to do is I definitely want to have my horizon placed, and that way I know exactly where the land ends and the sky begins. If I can still see my little marks that I did 2 inches below the top of the paper, then I can just connect those marks together. And I'm going to darken them just a little bit because I can see them, but they're very light. And connect those together. So these are what separate the land from the sky. Or if this was a seascape, it might be separating the sea from the sky. And if I want to, I can put some other details in the sky up here. So if I want to have, planes or helicopters or, I don't know, clouds, whatever, sun, you can do that. If you're going to do a sun, just make it a circle. Don't make it have any sort of like rays going around or anything. That tends to cheese it up a little bit and make it look a little less nice. Clouds, there is a trick you can use for clouds in perspective. You can draw lines that line up with one of your vanishing points. And since everything's kind of zooming away towards this vanishing point, I'm going to use this one here. And you can give yourself little short lines where your clouds are closer to your horizon. They can get a little bit longer as you go further from your vanishing point because they're going to be up higher than the horizon a little bit. I'm going to scooch over my ruler a little bit, just line it up with some of the lines I already drew here in order to get another slightly longer line over there. And then as your lines go up higher, you can make them go a little bit longer. So you can make another line of, or series of lines up a little bit higher. They don't have to line up with each other or anything, and they should get longer and longer and longer the further they go from the vanishing point. You have to pardon me. I don't know if you can hear that in the background, but we got gardeners that have arrived, I guess. And now these ones will be the longest lines. All right. So those lines are rough guesstimates to the angle of the bottom of your clouds. And we're going to make, I call them Simpsons clouds, because the Simpsons has a pretty good easy cloud technique that they use. They're always doing them a little fatter on one side, and that's to convey the sense that there is wind blowing in one direction, which makes the clouds kind of feel more realistic and consistent with each other. And so we just replaced that bottom line with a series of bouncy lines to give it the fluffiness of the cloud. For the ones that go up higher, you can make them a little bit larger. So as you get higher up in space and further away from your vanishing point, your clouds are going to get larger and larger and larger. All right, so just go ahead and take some time to put in some clouds if that is what helps to make your piece feel like it's a fully thought out landscape drawing. Just remembering that the lower they are, the smaller they are. And the reason for that is because the lower clouds are further away from you in space. So if you think about it, when you're looking way off into the distance, those clouds are lower. When you see clouds that are up higher, closer to you, they're more above your head and they are larger as a result. And if you want to, you can even make some of the clouds overlap. So this one would be further away, this one would be closer. So this one's going to go behind that one. So the higher up one is closer, so that lower down one would be behind it. Like I mentioned before, if you want to do a sun, just don't do sun rays going around the sun. Just give yourself a circle, and that will be absolutely readable as being the sun unless you go further and decide to put like craters in it to make it look like the moon. So have some fun with this and add extra things if you want to. If you want to add potholes or something in the road, you can do that. If you want to add a little run over animal or something, then give it a sense of character, give it a sense of fun and personality. And that way, it really reads like a piece that you would have created. And if you have any questions, obviously, you just let me know. I'll be happy to give you any assistance on whatever you would like to draw. Have a great day, everybody.